My name is Owens. This is an oral defense for the final project for Political Science 615, Political Islam and Terrorism, Bellevue University, ISIS program, Professor Dr. Matthew Croston. The title of this piece is The Threat of the Muslim Brotherhood in the New Egypt. This piece will look at the threat of the Muslim Brotherhood either leading or influencing the new Egyptian government. We will look at the nature of the threat, so who was threatened, how and why. We will evaluate the legitimacy of those threats. We'll look at the current United States policy in relation to the threat of the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt. We will do policy analysis and present options based upon publications, academic research, and public opinion pieces related to the policy of the United States. And finally, we will look at policy generation or make recommendations to the United States policy in order to help mitigate or minimize the threat the Muslim Brotherhood could play in the new Egyptian government. So first we'll look at the role of the Muslim Brotherhood in the Egyptian revolution that removed President Mubarak from office. The Muslim Brotherhood did not initiate or start the revolution or the movement. However, they did provide legitimacy to the youth movement. They filled the organizational political void by providing their extensive organizational and size structure to the movement and helped unify the people behind the movement to remove the existing regime. And this left the Muslim Brotherhood poised to participate significantly in the new Egyptian government, with the possibility of contesting for up to 50% of the parliamentary seats and the option of proposing or endorsing a presidential candidate in the coming elections. So when we look at the potential threats related to the Muslim Brotherhood leading or influencing the new Egyptian government, it's based upon whether or not the Muslim Brotherhood would implement an Islamic State in Egypt, potentially implementing Sharia law, and whether or not this would look like the Iranian theocracy currently in the Middle East, and what that would mean to the United States and its interests in the regions. Would this pose a threat to the United States as far as diplomacy and trade and peace in the region? Could it potentially lead to encouraging and spawning threats in the form of terrorism directed at the United States or its interests? Could this put at risk the United States military personnel and operations in the region by having an Islamic State in Egypt? Beyond just the United States, we look at the impact to the globe. We have to evaluate what the Muslim Brotherhood's philosophy and stewardship of the Suez Canal would be. The Suez Canal is critical in the trade of oil and petroleum through the Middle East to regions of the world such as China, Russia, Israel, the United States, all that are dependent upon that source of energy. The most primary and potentially immediate threat would be to Israel and how the Muslim Brotherhood would take diplomacy towards Israel. There's currently a peace accord between Egypt and Israel that is considered to be the foundation for peace in the region. The Muslim Brotherhood has stated that any new ruling party in Egypt or ruling government in Egypt should invalidate that particular peace treaty, and what that would do to the risk of peace, the risk of war in that area, and what it would mean to the United States to be between an Egyptian, Arabic, Middle Eastern conflict with Israel. And then lastly, the unique threat that the Muslim Brotherhood might play to the people of Egypt themselves. The people of Egypt revolted and removed the ruling power in order to have their voice be heard through elections, in order to increase the social and economic status of their country. And if the Muslim Brotherhood does have an influential role in the new Egyptian government, one wonders about the inclusiveness of that particular government and the policies related to the people of Egypt and how it would impact or threaten the goals of the people of Egypt who did initiate and overthrow their particular government. So first we must do an evaluation of those threats to test the legitimacy. There are two particular theories. One, the first, states that the Muslim Brotherhood should not be considered a threat to the United States or its interests. This is based on the idea that the Muslim Brotherhood has become more moderate in recent years. They have renounced their violent past, and that they're not intending to implement Sharia law in Egypt. The opposing view to this is that the Muslim Brotherhood does pose a significant threat to the United States and its interests in the region, that you don't have to look any further than their relationship with Hamas. Hamas is dedicated in its charter to the destruction of Israel. It is stated by this particular group that, or this particular theory, that the Muslim Brotherhood inspires jihad more than any other group in the Middle East. They've had recent calls for violence against Israel, and we've seen recent attacks against Israel and its interest, or protests against Israel and its interest in that area. This group is also stating that the Muslim Brotherhood has, in fact, at times lionized people like Osama bin Laden as jihadists as opposed to terrorists. So understanding the threats and legitimacy of the threats, we look at the United States policy and policy options related to mitigating the threat of the Muslim Brotherhood in the New Egypt. We see that there are two options. The first is recognition with the hopes of moderation. This is significantly present in academic research related to this type of threat, or the theory of threat, and the theory is the inclusion moderation theory. Essentially states that any political group that's hoping to gain support, win elections both internally and internationally, is forced to become more moderate, less extreme, in order to gain that particular support. The other option related to United States policy in reference to the Muslim Brotherhood would be a continued policy of non-recognition, which has historically been the United States policy towards any group or Islamic group that has a history of violence in it. In 2011, the United States did make a decision to legitimize the Muslim Brotherhood and extend the diplomacy towards a particular group. Secretary of State Clinton stated that the United States would extend diplomacy towards any group or political party that was committed to the peaceful democratic change in the region. So in 2011, the United States has legitimized the Muslim Brotherhood as potential candidates and ruling party of Egypt. So we look at the implications of that U.S. policy. It raises the questions on whether or not this extends to just the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt, or if it extends beyond that to groups such as Hamas, for other Islamist groups in the countries such as Yemen and Jordan, who are currently in the process of protesting and potentially revolting against their existing regimes. The Muslim Brotherhood plays a significant role in those areas. Is the question, has the Muslim Brotherhood become, or are they on the verge of becoming, like the PLO, once considered a terroristic organization and now considered a legitimate political party? So we look at alternative policy options the United States has. Options to the current moderation via inclusion strategy which the United States has decided to employ. The only tactical or viable option the United States has would be to help influence or delay the elections in Egypt. Ultimately, the decision on whether or not the Muslim Brotherhood does play a significant role in the new Egyptian government is dependent upon the Egyptian people. However, the United States could help influence delay the elections in Egypt with the hopes that other political groups, more moderate, perhaps secular groups, would have time to form, legitimize, and garner support for the elections. However, as we've seen, delaying the elections does have risks associated with that. We're seeing ongoing embattlement with the interim ruling party of the army, continued protest even today between the Muslim Brotherhood-backed public against the army. The longer that the elections are delayed, the greater the patience of the Egyptian people is being tested, as they are anxious for their opportunity to have their voice heard in the elections. The longer the elections are delayed, we also see perceptions amongst the Egyptian people that perhaps the army is unwilling or not ready to secede power. So based upon those understandings, we can look at potential recommendations or policy prescriptions for the United States in order to help mitigate or minimize the threat of the Muslim Brotherhood. The United States should continue to support democratization, as it feels its interests are best served around the world where democracies can and should stand. This does require the recognition and continued recognition of the Muslim Brotherhood. However, in order to help mitigate the threat that that potential group, the Muslim Brotherhood, or any other extremist or Islamic groups could pose, the United States should tie financial support to the ability of the ruling party to maintain peace. The United States currently provides Egypt with a large financial aid package that many consider to be a necessity in Egypt to maintain their social economic platforms. The United States should tie that package to the ability to maintain peace. The United States should incentivize and offer insurance for peaceful actions to diminish future threats. As we know, the future threat of the Muslim Brotherhood or any extremist group running Egypt or leading the new Egyptian government is not solely dependent upon the elections in 2011. Should whomever wins this election or leads the new Egyptian government have failures to exceed domestically in Egypt, we know that the Egyptian people have shown their ability and willingness to protest and to lead change, and that any opportunity that the Muslim Brotherhood has to fill the void left by political parties or failures is opportunity for them to position themselves as the conscience of the Egyptian people and step in and lead Egypt. So in order for democratization to work, for true democracy to occur in Egypt, the Muslim Brotherhood must be recognized and must have their place in the Egyptian elections. Thank you.
Okay.